My name is Isabella, 32 years old, and I just drove 8 hours to surprise my mom for her 60th birthday. Growing up, birthdays were magical. Mom would bake my favorite chocolate cake with rainbow sprinkles. Our relationship became strained over the years, but I was sure this surprise visit would help us reconcile. I parked outside my childhood home, heart full of hope, gifts in hand. Then my father opened the door and said flatly, "It will be better when you leave." Before I could respond, my mother shouted from the kitchen, "What do you not understand? I want to see only real family members today, not you." I stood frozen, smile fading. Let me know where you're watching from, and if you've ever felt unwelcome in your own family, hit that subscribe button. This story might help you more than you know. I always thought I had a beautiful relationship with my parents growing up. Our home in suburban Pennsylvania was filled with laughter and warmth. Dad worked as an accountant while Mom taught 3rd grade at the local elementary school. They were strict but loving, creating traditions that made our family feel special. Every birthday, Mom would spend hours decorating the house with balloons and streamers. Dad would take the day off work to be present for the celebration. I felt cherished and secure. Family gatherings were frequent and joyful events. Grandparents, aunts, uncles, and cousins would crowd into our modest home for holidays and special occasions. Mom took pride in preparing elaborate meals while Dad entertained everyone with his surprisingly good singing voice. I was their only child until my brother Thomas came along when I was 12, and I delighted in being the big sister. The first signs of tension emerged when I decided to attend Northwestern University in Chicago instead of Penn State, which was only an hour from home. My parents had always expected me to stay close by. "A family should remain together," my father would say. But I had dreams of working in marketing for major brands, and Northwestern offered an exceptional program. "Why do you need to go so far away? There are perfectly good schools right here," Mom argued during many tearful discussions. "This is an opportunity I can't pass up," I explained. "It's one of the best marketing programs in the country." Dad shook his head. "All these big ideas. Marketing is just a fancy word for selling things nobody needs." Despite their disapproval, I left for Chicago. I called home every Sunday night during my freshman year, but the conversations grew increasingly strained. My excitement about campus events and new friends was met with subtle guilt trips about missing family gatherings. When I secured an internship that prevented me from coming home for the summer after sophomore year, the disappointment in their voices was palpable. After graduation, I accepted a position with a respected marketing firm in Chicago. My parents had expected me to return home after college. "So you're abandoning us for good now?" my mother asked when I shared my career news. "I'm not abandoning anyone, Mom. I'm building my career. This is what I went to school for." "A career won't keep you warm at night or take care of you when you're sick," she replied. As years passed, our relationship deteriorated further. They disapproved of my apartment in the city, my friends, my lifestyle, even the way I dressed when I did visit home. Nothing I accomplished professionally seemed to impress them. Each visit became more tense than the last, with passive-aggressive comments about my choices and comparisons to cousins who had settled down properly near their parents. The communication breakdown accelerated over 10 years. Visits became less frequent. Phone calls shortened to awkward exchanges of basic information. Text messages replaced meaningful conversations. I began dreading holidays because they inevitably led to arguments about my life choices. 3 years ago, I missed my father's retirement party because of a critical client presentation that could not be rescheduled. I had explained the situation weeks in advance and sent an expensive gift with a heartfelt note, planning to visit the following weekend to celebrate privately with him, but that wasn't good enough. "How could you miss this once-in-a-lifetime event? Do you know how embarrassing it was to explain your absence to everyone?" he demanded during our heated phone call afterward. "Dad, I tried to explain how important this presentation was. My entire team's success depended on it." "More important than family. You always make the wrong choices, Isabella." That fight created an even deeper rift. Since then, we've barely communicated beyond obligatory holiday text messages and rare stiff phone calls on birthdays. Last Thanksgiving, I skipped the family gathering entirely, claiming a work conflict that didn't actually exist. The relief I felt from avoiding the tension was immediately followed by guilt and sadness about how distant we'd become. When I saw my mother's 60th birthday approaching on the calendar, something inside me shifted. 60 felt significant, a milestone that shouldn't pass without attempt at reconciliation. Perhaps this could be the opportunity to mend our broken relationship. I remembered how she had always gone all out for my birthdays, and I wanted to reciprocate that love. I spent weeks planning the perfect surprise. I purchased a delicate silver necklace she'd admired years ago in a catalog, along with a photo album I had carefully assembled with pictures spanning her life. I arranged time off work, booked a dog sitter for my golden retriever, and mapped out the 8-hour drive. I even contacted her favorite bakery in our hometown to order her preferred lemon cake with vanilla buttercream frosting. I was determined to make this surprise perfect, convinced that my effort would demonstrate my love and help bridge the painful gap between us. "Are you sure this is a good idea?" my best friend Amanda asked when I shared my plans. "They haven't exactly been welcoming lately." "It's her 60th birthday, Amanda. If there's ever a time to try and fix things, it's now. Mom loves surprises, and Dad will come around once he sees how much this means to her." I assured her, clinging to memories of happier times and refusing to acknowledge the knot of anxiety forming in my stomach. Little did I know how tragically wrong I was. My alarm blared at 4:30 in the morning on the day of my mother's birthday. I had packed the car the night before, securing the cake box and carefully wrapped gifts on the passenger seat. The early autumn air felt crisp as I pulled out of my apartment complex in Chicago, the sky still dark with just the faintest hint of dawn approaching. The drive stretched ahead of me, 8 full hours of highway monotony and plenty of time for memories and second-guessing. As the sun rose over the Illinois farmland, I found myself drifting back to childhood road trips in the family station wagon, singing along to my parents' favorite Beatles cassettes and playing license plate bingo. Those simple moments felt precious, now relics of a relationship that had somehow slipped through my fingers. Crossing the Ohio border, doubts began creeping in. Was this surprise visit really a good idea? What if they weren't happy to see me? I pushed those thoughts away and called Amanda on my car's Bluetooth. "How's the drive going?" she asked. "4 hours down, 4 to go. I'm making good time," I replied, adjusting my grip on the steering wheel. "How are you feeling about this whole thing?" I sighed. "Honestly, a mix of excited and terrified. What if they slammed the door in my face?" "Isabella, they're your parents. They might be difficult, but they still love you," Amanda said, though her tone lacked conviction. "You didn't hear how my dad spoke to me after his retirement party. There was so much disappointment in his voice. Just prepare yourself, okay? They might need time to adjust to seeing you. Don't expect some magical Hallmark movie reunion." I know. I'm being realistic." I insisted, though, in my heart. I was still hoping for that movie moment, the tearful embraces and instant healing of old wounds. After hanging up, I stopped at a service plaza for coffee and a quick break. Standing in line, I noticed a mother and daughter laughing together over shared pastries, their easy affection making my chest ache with longing. When had Mom and I last shared a moment like that? 5 years ago, 10. Back on the road, I rehearsed what I might say when I arrived. Should I keep it light and casual? Go for humor, make a heartfelt speech? Nothing seemed right. By the time I entered Pennsylvania, my hands were sweating on the steering wheel despite the cool air conditioning. As I neared my hometown, familiar landmarks appeared. The high school where I had been yearbook editor, the park where Dad taught me to ride a bike, the ice cream shop where we celebrated good report cards. Each sight tugged at my heart, reminding me of the loving family we had once been. My GPS directed me off the highway and through the suburbs where I grew up. The neighborhoods had changed slightly but retained their essential character. New fences here, different colored shutters there, but the same tree-lined streets and well-kept lawns. When I turned onto my parents' street, I noticed several cars parked near their house. My stomach dropped. Of course they would be having a proper celebration. Mom always loved hosting parties. Had they invited extended family friends from church neighbors, I hadn't considered that there might be other people present for my surprise arrival. I parked a few houses down to gather my composure. In the rearview mirror, I applied fresh lipstick and smoothed my hair, suddenly concerned about my appearance after 8 hours on the road. The gifts and cake seemed inadequate now. What had seemed like a grand gesture in Chicago now felt naive and presumptuous. Taking a deep breath, I collected the cake box and gift bags and walked toward the familiar colonial-style house where I grew up. The front lawn was immaculate as always, my father's pride and joy. Flower beds bloomed with my mother's favorite autumn chrysanthemums. Some things never changed. As I approached the front door, I could hear muffled conversation and laughter from inside. My heart raced. This was it. I balanced the cake in one hand and rang the doorbell with the other, plastering what I hoped was a natural, joyful smile on my face. Footsteps approached. The door swung open. My father stood there, his face registering shock that quickly transformed into something harder, more guarded. He had aged since I last saw him, more gray in his hair, deeper lines around his eyes. "Isabella," he said, making no move to welcome me in or take the cake from my trembling hands. "Surprise happy birthday to Mom," I exclaimed, my voice unnaturally high and brittle even to my own ears. He stared at me for a long moment, then spoke the words that would echo in my mind for months to come. "It will be better when you leave." The statement was delivered calmly, matter-of-factly, as though he were commenting on the weather, not angry or emotional, which somehow made it worse. Just a simple truth he felt needed stating. Before I could respond, before I could process the devastating blow of those 6 words, my mother's voice carried from inside the house. "Who's at the door, Robert?" she called, footsteps approaching from what I assumed was the kitchen. Then she appeared behind him, wiping her hands on an apron, her face freezing when she saw me. No happiness, no surprise, just shock, followed by something that looked distressingly like irritation. "What are you doing here?" she demanded. "It's your birthday," I said weakly, still holding the cake, still standing on the porch like a stranger. "I drove 8 hours to surprise you." Her expression hardened. "What do you not understand? I want to see only real family members today, not you." The words hit like physical blows. Real family members, not you. The implication that I no longer qualified as family stabbed through me. I stood there completely stunned, cake box growing heavy in my hands, gift bags dangling from my wrist as the weight of their rejection pressed down upon me with crushing force. Despite every instinct screaming at me to run back to my car, I somehow found myself stepping over the threshold into my childhood home. The familiar scent of my mother's cinnamon apple potpourri mingled with the aroma of roasting turkey. I placed the cake and gifts silently on the entryway table, movements mechanical as I processed the shock of their greeting. "I brought your favorite lemon cake from Henderson's," I said numbly, gesturing to the box. "And some gifts." Neither of my parents acknowledged the offerings. Dad had moved to stand beside Mom, presenting a unified front against my unexpected invasion. "You should have called first," Mom said, arms crossed defensively over her chest. "We have guests." As if on cue, a curious face peered from the living room doorway. My Aunt Carol, my mother's sister, looked surprised to see me. "Isabella? My goodness, what a shock, we didn't know you were coming," she said, approaching to give me an awkward half-hug. "It was supposed to be a surprise," I explained, forcing a smile. "For Mom's birthday." More faces appeared. Uncle Frank, Aunt Mary's husband, cousins I hadn't seen in years, my mother's childhood friend, Judith, all wearing expressions ranging from surprise to discomfort to curiosity. "Well, isn't this unexpected?" said my Uncle Richard, my father's brother. The emphasis on unexpected carried weight, suggesting my presence was not merely a surprise, but an unwelcome disruption. I followed the group back to the living room, where a birthday celebration had clearly been in full swing. Presents piled on a side table, festive decorations hung from the ceiling. A large Happy 60th Birthday banner dominated one wall. "We didn't set a place for you at dinner," Mom said, not quite meeting my eyes. "We're eating in 20 minutes. "That's okay. I can grab a plate from the cabinet," I offered, trying to sound casual as though my parents hadn't just told me I wasn't welcome in my childhood home. "We didn't think you'd come even if we invited you," Dad said flatly. "You never do." The accusation hung in the air. I wanted to protest, to remind him of the times I'd tried to visit only to be met with passive-aggressive comments or outright criticism, but I remained silent. Creating a scene in front of extended family wouldn't help. Isabella has been so busy with her important career in Chicago, Mom added with unmistakable sarcasm. No time for family anymore. My cousin Julia, always the peacemaker, tried to diffuse the tension. It's really nice that you drove all this way, Isabella. How long has it been since we all saw you? 3 years? Nearly 4. I admitted, sinking onto the edge of the sofa. Work has been hectic. Always work, Dad muttered. Always some excuse. I swallowed hard, fighting to maintain composure. Looking around the living room, I noticed changes. New furniture, different wall color, and photographs. Many photographs I had never seen before. Family gatherings I hadn't been invited to. Holidays I'd apparently missed. And prominently displayed on the mantel, a large framed family portrait that included everyone: my parents, brother Thomas, who had moved to Australia 2 years ago, but had apparently returned for a visit, aunts, uncles, cousins, everyone except me. I was being erased. When was this taken? I asked, pointing to the portrait, unable to keep a slight tremor from my voice. Last Christmas, Mom replied, when the whole family was here. I wasn't invited, I said quietly. Would you have come if you were? Dad challenged. Before I could answer, Mom interjected. Thomas flew all the way from Sydney. That's a real commitment to family. The comparison stung. Thomas had always been the golden child since his birth, but the division had grown more pronounced in adulthood. Somehow his move to literally the opposite side of the world was forgivable, while my relocation to a city 8 hours away was an unforgivable abandonment. Cousin Julia touched my arm gently. How long are you staying in town? I hadn't really decided, I admitted. I got a room at the Holiday Inn just in case. Smart, my mother said coldly. We don't have space anyway. Thomas stays in your old room when he visits. I nodded, throat tight. My childhood bedroom, once filled with my trophies, books, and memories, had been given away. Another sign that I no longer belonged. Mom disappeared into the kitchen, clearly avoiding further interaction with me. The others made stilted small talk, asking about my job, my apartment, my life in Chicago. I answered automatically, mind still reeling from the hostility of my reception. When dinner was announced, I followed the group to the dining room. The table was beautifully set with Mom's best china and crystal glasses, a spread of her signature dishes steaming in serving bowls down the center of the table. Isabella, you can sit there. Dad pointed to a chair in the corner apart from the main grouping. Uncle Richard hurriedly brought another place setting from the china cabinet, looking uncomfortable as he arranged it before me. Throughout the meal, Mom acted as though I were invisible, directing conversation around me rather than to me. She praised Thomas' recent promotion, though he wasn't present, and fawned over my cousin's accomplishments, while ignoring my existence. Isabella, how's that marketing job going, still convincing people to buy things they don't need? Dad asked during a lull, his tone making it clear he considered my career frivolous. Actually, I've been promoted to senior brand strategist, I replied, attempting to inject some pride into my voice. My team won an industry award for our latest campaign. Was his only response before turning to ask Uncle Frank about his golf game. The dismissal was yet another cut in a death by thousand cuts evening. Mom refilled everyone else's wine glass, but skipped mine. She complimented Aunt Carol's new hairstyle while making a pointed comment about my city look, clearly not meant as a compliment. When she brought out a stunning birthday cake, not the one I had brought, but a chocolate raspberry creation I'd never seen before, she served everyone but me, passing me over as though I were invisible. Mom, I said quietly, you missed me. She looked at my empty plate with feigned surprise. Oh, I thought you wouldn't want any. You're always so concerned about your figure. The comment, aimed at a lifelong insecurity she well knew about, was deliberately hurtful. I felt myself shrinking in my chair, becoming smaller with each passing moment in this house that no longer felt like home. Throughout dessert, the conversation turned to family memories, vacations, celebrations, shared jokes, all carefully curated to exclude any events that included me prominently. It was as though they were painting a family portrait where I existed only as a shadow in the background, if at all. By the time coffee was served, I felt completely hollowed out. The drive, the emotional preparation, the hope I'd carried for reconciliation, all had been crushed under the weight of their deliberate exclusion and thinly veiled contempt. "Remember when Thomas scored the winning goal in the state championship?" Dad reminisced proudly. "The whole family was there to see it." "I wasn't," I said, unable to stop myself. "I had a final exam that couldn't be rescheduled." "You always had something more important," Mom said sharply. "Some reason why you couldn't be bothered with family." The accusation, so unfair and so untrue, was the final straw. 8 hours of driving, years of trying to maintain a relationship, despite their criticism, the emotional labor of hoping for reconciliation, all crashed down around me. "That's not fair," I said, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. "I've tried to be part of this family. I've visited when I could. I'm here now, aren't I?" "After how long?" Dad demanded. "Years of barely a word, then you show up unannounced expecting a warm welcome." "I thought a surprise would be special," I said, fighting back tears. "Mom always loved surprises." "When they come from people who care enough to be present in our lives," she replied icily. The room fell uncomfortably silent. My extended family shifted in their seats, clearly wishing they could be anywhere else. "I've always cared," I said, my voice breaking. "Always." "If you cared so much, you wouldn't have abandoned your family for that job in Chicago." Mom snapped, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You wouldn't have missed your brother's graduation, your cousin's wedding, your father's retirement." "I didn't abandon anyone," I protested, feeling the careful control I'd maintained all evening beginning to slip. "I built a life 8 hours away, not on Mars. And I explained about Dad's retirement party. I had a major presentation." "Always excuses," Dad interrupted. "Always something more important than family." "This isn't fair," I said, rising from my chair, hands trembling. "I drove 8 hours today to surprise you, brought gifts and cake, hoping we could repair our relationship. And all you've done is treat me like an unwanted intruder." The dining room had become painfully quiet, the extended family watching our confrontation with uncomfortable expressions. Aunt Carol studied her coffee cup intently. Uncle Richard examined the ceiling as though architectural details had suddenly become fascinating. "Do you know what isn't fair?" Mom said, standing to face me. "Having a daughter who turns her back on everything we taught her, who thinks she's too good for her hometown, who barely calls unless she wants something." "That's not true. When have I ever called asking for anything?" My voice had risen despite my efforts to stay calm. "You took and took from us your entire life." Dad joined in. "The expensive college we helped pay, for the car we bought you, the support we've given, and how do you repay us? By moving away and forgetting we exist." Each accusation felt like a physical blow. The narrative they were spinning bore almost no resemblance to reality as I had lived it. Yes, they'd helped with college expenses, but I'd worked part-time jobs and taken out loans for most of it. The car had been a 12-year-old Honda with nearly 200,000 miles on it, hardly a lavish gift. And I'd never ever forgotten they existed, quite the opposite. Their disapproval had haunted my decisions for years. "Is that what you've told everyone?" I asked, looking around at my relatives. "That I abandoned you, that I'm ungrateful?" No one would meet my eyes except Cousin Julia, who gave me a look of sympathetic discomfort. "We don't have to tell anyone anything," Mom said coldly. "Your actions speak for themselves." "My actions, like building a career I'm proud of, like driving 8 hours to celebrate your birthday." My control was slipping further, tears threatening. "What exactly have I done that's so terrible?" "You left," Dad said simply, as though that explained everything. "You left, and you took Thomas with you." The accusation struck me speechless for a moment. "What are you talking about? Thomas moved to Australia for his job 2 years ago. That had nothing to do with me." "He never would have considered moving so far away if you hadn't set the example," Mom said. "You showed him it was acceptable to abandon family. Now both my children are gone." The realization hit me like a thunderbolt. They were using me as the scapegoat for all their disappointments, including Thomas leaving. Somehow in their narrative, I was responsible not only for my own choices, but for his as well. "That's ridiculous," I said, unable to hold back now. "Thomas is an adult who made his own decision. And I'm not gone, I'm right here trying to reconnect despite how you're treating me." "Oh, now we're the villains." Dad threw his napkin onto the table. Typical Isabella, always the victim, never taking responsibility. Something broke inside me at that moment. Years of seeking approval, of making myself smaller to fit their expectations, of absorbing criticism while still trying to maintain a relationship, it all came crashing down. "Do you even hear yourselves?" I asked, tears finally spilling over. "Do you have any idea how much your words hurt? I have spent years trying to make you proud, calling, despite your criticism, visiting, despite knowing it'd be judged from the moment I walked in the door. I have bent over backwards trying to maintain a relationship with you, and nothing has ever been enough." "That's not," Mom began, but I cut her off. "Let me finish. Tonight I drove 8 hours to surprise you for your birthday, Mom. I brought your favorite cake gifts I put thought into. I was prepared to forgive years of hurtful comments and cold shoulders because I believed family was worth it. And you greet me by saying it would be better if I left, by telling me I'm not real family." My voice broke completely on the last words. Through blurred vision, I saw uncomfortable shifts around the table, several relatives looking at my parents with new questioning expressions. "You don't understand," Mom said, but her voice held less conviction now. "What don't I understand? Please explain it to me. Explain why you've treated me like a stranger in my own family home. Explain why you've apparently written me out of family history. Explain why nothing I do is ever good enough for you." The silence stretched heavy and oppressive. Dad stared at his plate. Mom pressed her lips together in a thin line. "You've never been the daughter I wanted." She finally said the words, falling into the silence like stones into deep water. The statement, so simple and so devastating, knocked the air from my lungs. I stood there completely shattered, unable to form words through the overwhelming pain of final rejection. My aunts, uncles, and cousins looked as shocked as I felt. Aunt Carol gasped audibly. Uncle Richard murmured something that sounded like, "Margaret, for God's sake." Julia half rose from her chair as if to come to me. But I was already moving, gathering my purse with trembling hands, needing to escape before I completely broke down in front of everyone. "Isabella, wait," Julia called. But I couldn't stop, couldn't bear another moment in that house. "I'm sorry I came," I managed to say, voice barely a whisper. "I won't make that mistake again." I fled through the front door, barely hearing my father's parting remark. "Drama as usual. This is why we didn't invite you." The cool evening air hit my tear-streaked face as I stumbled toward my car, fumbling with keys, desperate to get away, before the sobs building in my chest broke free. I somehow managed to drive 2 blocks before pulling over, my vision too blurred with tears to continue safely. The sobs I had been holding back erupted, violent and raw. I gripped the steering wheel, bending forward until my forehead rested against it, and let years of pain pour out. "You've never been the daughter I wanted." The words replayed in an endless, torturous loop. Not, "I didn't mean that," or "let's talk about this," or "I'm sorry." Just the unvarnished truth as my mother saw it, delivered with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. When the first wave of emotion subsided, I fumbled for my phone and called Amanda with shaking hands. "Hey, how's the surprise going?" she answered cheerfully. "They told me to leave." I choked out, fresh tears flowing. "Mom said she only wanted real family there. She said I've never been the daughter she wanted." "Oh my God, Isabella!" Amanda's shock was evident. "Where are you now?" "In my car. I can't drive all the way back tonight. I can't stop crying." "You booked a hotel, right? The Holiday Inn." Her voice was steady, calming. "Can you make it there safely?" I took a deep, shuddering breath. "I think so. It's only 10 minutes away." "Go there, check in, text me when you're in your room. We'll figure this out together." Following Amanda's instructions gave me a focus beyond my pain. I drove carefully to the hotel, checking in with swollen eyes and a hollow feeling in my chest. Once in my room, I texted Amanda as promised, then sat on the edge of the bed feeling completely untethered. We'd been talking for about 20 minutes when my phone signaled another incoming call. The screen showed Julia's name. "It's my cousin," I told Amanda. "I should take this." "Call me back if you need me," Amanda said before disconnecting. I answered Julia's call with trepidation. "Isabella." Julia's voice was tentative. "Are you okay? Where are you?" "I'm at the Holiday Inn," I said flatly. I'm fine. You're not fine, and what happened was terrible. Can I come see you? Please, I won't stay long if you don't want, but I can't leave things like this. Something in her tone, genuine concern, perhaps even a touch of guilt, made me agree. I gave her my room number and spent the intervening time washing my face, trying to erase the evidence of my breakdown. Julia arrived 30 minutes later, her kind face etched with concern. She hugged me tightly in the doorway. "I'm so sorry," she said. "That was horrible. Everyone was uncomfortable with how they treated you." "Then why didn't anyone say anything?" I asked, leading her into the room. Julia sighed, sitting on the desk chair while I perched on the bed. "Family dynamics, I guess. No one wants to challenge Aunt Margaret and Uncle Robert directly. But after you left, several people did speak up." "Really? I hadn't expected that." "Uncle Richard told your mom she went too far. Aunt Carol said she was ashamed of how you were treated. It got pretty tense." I processed this information slowly. "Did it make any difference?" "Your parents got defensive at first, but I think the unified disapproval affected them. Your mom went to the kitchen and came back looking, I don't know, less certain maybe." We sat in silence for a moment before Julia spoke again, her voice careful. "Isabella, there's something you should know. Something that might help explain some of this, though it doesn't excuse their behavior." "What is it?" "Your parents have been like this with others in the family, not just you. Your mom's always had this vision of the perfect family, and anyone who deviates gets pushed away. My brother wasn't invited to Christmas 3 years ago because he got divorced. Aunt Mary was barely acknowledged at Thanksgiving after she missed some family event for work." "I had no idea," I said, genuinely surprised. "They always made me feel like I was the only one who disappointed them." Julia shook her head. "You're just their favorite target because you're their daughter, and they think they have more right to control you. They've been telling this narrative about you abandoning the family for years, but many of us have seen through it." "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "We barely see each other anymore," she pointed out. "And honestly, I thought you knew. I thought everyone knew how your parents operate. They use guilt and exclusion to try to control people. They did the same thing with Thomas until he moved even farther away than you did." This revelation shifted something fundamental in my understanding. The problem wasn't me. It never had been. The problem was a toxic family system I'd been trapped in without fully recognizing it. "Have they always been like this?" I asked. "As long as I can remember," Julia confirmed. "My mom, your Aunt Carol, has stories from when they were growing up. Your mom was always the perfect daughter who expected everyone to follow her rules. Your dad enables it completely." We talked for nearly an hour, Julia sharing examples of my parents' controlling behavior toward other family members over the years. Patterns emerged that I had been too close to see, too emotionally involved to recognize. "I'm going back," I said suddenly, the decision crystallizing as we talked. "Back to the party. Are you sure?" Julia looked concerned. "Not to stay, but I can't leave things like this. I need to stand up for myself clearly and calmly without breaking down. I need them to hear me even if they don't change." Julia studied me for a moment. "I think that's brave. Do you want me to come with you?" I shook my head. "No, this is something I need to do myself." After Julia left, I spent several minutes gathering my strength. I splashed water on my face, reapplied minimal makeup, and changed into fresh clothes from my overnight bag. Looking in the mirror, I barely recognized the determined woman staring back at me. For the first time, I was going to face my parents not as a daughter desperately seeking approval, but as an adult who deserved respect. The drive back to my parents' house took less than 10 minutes. Only 30 minutes had passed since my tearful exit, but I felt transformed. As I parked, I noticed fewer cars outside. Some guests had apparently departed, perhaps uncomfortable with the family drama they'd witnessed. I rang the doorbell, standing tall, breathing steady. When my father opened the door, his expression registered genuine shock. "Isabella, you came back." For once, he seemed at a loss for words. "We need to talk," I said firmly, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. In the living room, my mother sat stiffly on the sofa, looking up with wide eyes when I entered. Several relatives remained, including Aunt Carol, Uncle Richard, and Julia, who must have returned directly here after leaving me. "Isabella," my mother began, her tone entirely different from earlier. We didn't expect you to come back. I almost didn't, I admitted. But there are things that need to be said. The atmosphere in the living room had transformed completely. Where before there had been celebration, now tension hung thick in the air. My parents seemed caught off guard by my return, their earlier hostility replaced by an uncertain wariness. "Please sit down," my father said, gesturing to an armchair, his tone almost conciliatory. I remained standing, drawing strength from my full height. "I prefer to stand, thank you." My mother shifted uncomfortably on the sofa. "Isabella, about what I said earlier. I'm not here for an apology that you don't truly mean," I interrupted, surprised by my own steadiness. "I'm here to speak my truth and then it'll go." The remaining relatives exchanged glances. Aunt Carol gave me a small nod of encouragement while Uncle Richard studied my parents with an unreadable expression. "The way you've treated me tonight is consistent with how you've treated me for years," I began. "You've made me feel unwelcome, unworthy, and unloved because I chose a path different from what you envisioned for me." "That's not—" Dad started, but I held up my hand. "Please let me finish. For years I've internalized your criticism, believing there was something wrong with me, that if I just tried harder, or achieved more, or visited more often, I'd finally earn your approval. Tonight I've realized that nothing will ever be enough because the problem isn't me." My mother flinched visibly at these words. "You have constructed a narrative where I'm the ungrateful daughter who abandoned her family, and you've repeated it so often that perhaps you believe it yourselves. But it's not true. I've maintained contact despite your criticism. I've visited despite knowing it'd be judged. I've called despite conversations that left me feeling worse, not better." I took a breath, centering myself. What I realized tonight with perfect clarity is that I can't fix this relationship alone. It takes two willing participants to repair a relationship, and you have shown me repeatedly that you're not interested in a healthy connection, only in control. The silence in the room was profound. Even my parents, usually quick with counter-arguments, seemed at a loss for words. "Isabella," my mother finally said, her voice strangely subdued, "you don't understand how hard it's been for us. When you left, I didn't leave Mom. I grew up. I built a life as adults do. That's not abandonment, that's normal human development." "But family should stay together," my father insisted, though with less conviction than before. "Family should support each other even from a distance," I countered. "Family should celebrate achievements, not resent them. Family should make each other feel valued, not constantly judged." I noticed my mother glancing anxiously at the remaining relatives, seemingly concerned about how this conversation was being perceived. Her usual confidence appeared shaken. "We want you in our lives," she said suddenly, the dramatic shift in tone almost giving me emotional whiplash. "We've always wanted that." Dad nodded quickly. "Of course we have. We're your parents." The abrupt change confused me until I recognized it for what it was. They were losing their audience. The family members witnessing this exchange were seeing a side of my parents they perhaps had never fully acknowledged before, and my parents were uncomfortable being exposed. "You have a strange way of showing it," I replied evenly. "Telling me it would be better when I left, that I'm not real family, that I've never been the daughter you wanted. Those aren't the words of people who want someone in their life." My father stepped forward, switching tactics entirely. "Look, we've all said things in the heat of the moment. Why don't we start fresh? We can talk about this like adults." "I'll get coffee," my mother added, half rising from the sofa. "And I haven't opened your gifts yet. We could do that now." The performance was almost impressive how quickly they could pivot from rejection to invitation when they realized their usual tactics weren't working. "No," I said simply. "I'm not staying." "Don't be dramatic, Isabella," Dad said, a hint of the earlier sternness returning. "Your mother is offering an olive branch." "An olive branch requires sincerity, not convenience," I replied. "Nothing has changed in the past 30 minutes, except that you've realized others are witnessing your behavior and judging it." My mother sank back onto the sofa, face pale. My father looked from me to the relatives and back, clearly calculating how to regain control of the situation. "If you're truly interested in rebuilding our relationship," I continued, It won't happen tonight or with an audience. It would require acknowledgement of the hurt you've caused not just tonight but for years. It would require respect for my choices and my life. Most importantly, it would require you to see me as I am not as who you wanted me to be. I moved toward the entryway where Id left my purse earlier. I'm going back to my hotel now. I'll be returning to Chicago tomorrow. Isabella, wait, my mother called suddenly, sounding desperate. You can't just leave again. What about family? What about forgiveness? The irony of her asking for forgiveness after explicitly telling me to leave was not lost on me, or judging by their expressions on my extended family. Forgiveness is earned through genuine remorse and changed behavior, I said, turning back briefly. It's not owed simply because you suddenly want it. Were your parents? My father said, as though that fact alone entitled them to unlimited chances. You can't just walk away from family. I'm not walking away, I clarified. I'm establishing boundaries. There's a difference. I'm open to communication in the future if it's respectful and constructive, but I won't subject myself to treatment like tonight's again. I retrieved the birthday card I'd brought from my purse, placing it on the entryway table, but leaving the gifts where Id set them earlier. Happy birthday, Mom. I truly hope your 60th year brings reflection and growth. As I turned to leave, Julia caught my eye and gave me a subtle thumbs up. Aunt Carol nodded, almost imperceptibly, respect evident in her expression. Even Uncle Richard, my father's own brother, made no move to stop me or support my parents' position. If you walk out that door, my father called after me, one last attempt at control, don't expect us to welcome you back with open arms. I paused at the threshold, hand on the doorknob, and looked back at my parents, my mother now standing beside my father, both looking somehow smaller than they had just hours ago. I drove 8 hours with hope today, I said quietly. If I ever make that drive again, it will be with clear eyes and firm boundaries. The choice of whether that happens is as much yours as it is mine. With those words, I walked out, closing the door gently behind me. There was no slam, no dramatic exit, just the quiet click of a door and the even quieter recognition that something fundamental had shifted inside me. As I walked to my car, I heard the front door open again behind me. I turned, half expecting to see my parents, but instead found Julia hurrying toward me. Isabella, wait, she called. I'm really leaving this time, I said, not wanting to be persuaded to return again. I know, she nodded. I just wanted to say that was incredible, truly. And also, I'm going to text you later about getting together for breakfast tomorrow before you head back to Chicago. A few of us want to see you. Her words were an unexpected balm to my still raw emotions. I'd like that, I managed to say. Drive safe back to the hotel. She squeezed my arm. And for what it's worth, I think your parents may actually have heard you this time. I wasn't sure if I believed that or even if it mattered anymore. What I did know was that for perhaps the first time in my adult life, I had spoken my truth to my parents without flinching, without backing down, and without accepting their distorted narrative. As I drove back to the hotel, I felt something unexpected beneath the lingering pain and exhaustion, a sense of lightness of burdens long carried now set down. Tonight hadn't gone at all as I had planned or hoped, but perhaps it had gone exactly as needed. Back in my hotel room, I kicked off my shoes and collapsed onto the bed, emotionally and physically drained. The events of the day, the long drive filled with hope, the crushing rejection, and finally my unexpected stand had left me feeling hollow, yet somehow stronger than before. I checked my phone to find texts from Amanda asking for updates. I sent her a brief summary promising a full account tomorrow. There was also a message from Julia confirming breakfast at 9 a.m. at a local diner with her and 2 other cousins. Sleep came surprisingly easily that night. No tossing and turning, no replaying of hurtful words. Just the deep restorative rest that follows profound emotional release. The next morning brought gentle autumn sunshine streaming through the hotel curtains. I awoke feeling oddly peaceful, as though my subconscious had continued processing overnight and arrived at acceptance. Breakfast with Julia and my cousins Sarah and Michael was unexpectedly healing. They shared their own stories of dealing with my parents' rigidity over the years, confirming what Julia had begun to reveal the night before, that the problem had never been me alone. Aunt Margaret has always been this way, Sarah confirmed over coffee. Remember when she wouldn't speak to Dad for 6 months because he missed Grandma's birthday party for a work emergency? Or when she told my wife her dress was inappropriate for a family gathering at our first Christmas together? Michael added. Karen still feels uncomfortable at family events. Each story reinforced what I'd begun to understand. My parents' behavior was part of a pattern that extended beyond me. The recognition was both painful and liberating. Are you going to try to talk to them again before you leave? Julia asked as we finished breakfast. I shook my head. No. They need time to process, and so do I. Whatever happens next needs to be different from the cycles we've been stuck in. My cousins nodded in understanding. Before we parted, we exchanged contact information with promises to stay in touch more regularly. For the first time, I felt connected to extended family independently of my parents' gatekeeping. The drive back to Chicago was entirely different from the journey out. Where hope and anxiety had been my companions on the way to Pennsylvania, clarity and resolve accompanied me home. I used the long hours to reflect on what healthy boundaries with my parents might look like moving forward. No more accepting blame for their disappointments. No more shrinking myself to fit their expectations. No more pretending their hurtful words didn't wound me. I arrived home to my apartment and my excited golden retriever Max as evening fell. After taking him for a walk and settling in with takeout, I called Amanda to give her the full story. So what happens now? She asked after listening attentively. Honestly, I don't know. The ball is in their court in many ways. I'm not reaching out immediately. And if they don't reach out to you, I considered this possibility which would have terrified me just days ago. Then I continue building my life and finding my joy without their approval. It's what I've been doing anyway, just with less guilt and self-doubt. The days that followed brought an odd sense of calm. I'd expected to feel more grief, more longing for reconciliation, but instead found myself breathing more easily. Colleagues commented on my more relaxed demeanor in meetings. I slept better. The weight of constantly seeking unobtainable approval had lifted. A week passed with no contact from my parents. Then 2. I sent birthday cards to relatives I'd connected with at breakfast. I joined a book club I'd been considering for months but never made time for. I volunteered at a local animal shelter. 4 weeks after the birthday debacle, I received a text from my mother. Isabella, your father and I have been thinking about what you said. Would you be willing to have a phone call with us? I waited a full day before responding, considering carefully what boundaries I needed to maintain. I'm open to a conversation if we can communicate respectfully. Sunday at 4 p.m. would work for me. The scheduled call was awkward but markedly different from our previous interactions. My parents didn't apologize directly, I hadn't expected them to, but there was a tentative quality to their words, a caution that suggested awareness that our relationship had fundamentally changed. We've been talking about what you said, my father acknowledged stiffly. About feeling judged and unwelcome. We never meant to make you feel that way, my mother added, the familiar deflection rising automatically. But I did feel that way consistently for years, I replied calmly. And on your birthday, you explicitly told me to leave and that I wasn't family. The silence that followed suggested they were still struggling to fully accept responsibility for their actions. Change, if it was coming at all, would be slow and incremental. Perhaps we could try again, my mother finally offered. Maybe you could visit for Thanksgiving. Her tone held none of the demand or expectation it once would have. I'm not ready for another visit yet, I said honestly. I think smaller steps would be better. Regular phone calls where we actually listen to each other might be a place to start. They agreed, seeming relieved at the reprieve. We ended the call with plans to speak again in 2 weeks, a schedule that felt manageable to me. Meanwhile, I continued strengthening other aspects of my life. I deepened friendships that had sometimes taken a back seat to my family anxiety. Amanda and I planned a weekend trip to New York. I reconnected with college friends I'd fallen out of touch with. I also sought out a therapist specializing in family relationships. Dr. Wilson helped me recognize patterns I'd internalized from my upbringing and develop healthier responses. Your parents may never fully change, she cautioned during one session, but you can change how their behavior affects you. The scheduled calls with my parents continued, some more successful than others. Old patterns occasionally emerged, criticism thinly veiled as concern, comparisons to Thomas or cousins, but now I recognized them immediately and could address them directly. Mom comparing my choices to Sarah's isn't helpful. We're different people with different lives. Dad, when you dismiss my work accomplishments, it hurts. I'd appreciate if you could acknowledge my success even if you don't fully understand my industry. Sometimes they bristled at this directness, but increasingly they paused and adjusted. Small moments of progress amid the ingrained habits of a lifetime. 6 months after my mother's birthday holiday planning loomed, the bi-weekly calls had maintained a tentative connection, but the thought of another in-person visit still triggered anxiety. I think I'm going to decline Thanksgiving at my parents' this year, I told Dr. Wilson. I'm not ready for that level of engagement yet. She nodded. What will you do instead? Amanda has invited me to join her family, and I'm thinking of hosting a small Friendsgiving the weekend before for those of us staying in Chicago. Creating new traditions felt surprisingly liberating. I sent my parents a thoughtful card for Thanksgiving with a brief note explaining my decision not to attend, but expressing hope for continued healing in our relationship. My mother called afterward, disappointment evident in her voice, but lacking the guilt trips of the past. We understand, she said, though I could tell it was difficult for her. Perhaps Christmas. Let's see how the next month goes. I replied, neither committing nor refusing outright. Work brought unexpected opportunities during this period. The focus and energy previously consumed by family drama found more productive channels. I led a successful campaign that earned industry recognition and brought a major new client to the firm. My boss mentioned potential for further advancement in the coming year. 1 year after the birthday, that changed everything. I received a letter from my mother. Not a text or email, but an actual handwritten letter, something she hadn't sent since my first year of college. Dear Isabella, it began. As my birthday approaches, I've been reflecting on last year and the pain we caused you. Your father and I have been attending counseling with Pastor Jim from church. It's been difficult to confront some truths about ourselves and our expectations. She went on to acknowledge, not in general terms, but with specific examples, times when their behavior had been controlling or hurtful. She expressed regret without excuses. She asked if I'd consider visiting again sometime, no pressure, no specific date demand, just an open invitation. Whatever you decide, I want you to know that I am proud of the woman you've become, even if I've struggled to show it. You are strong, principled, and brave, qualities I see now as strengths rather than challenges to my authority. The letter wasn't perfect. Old patterns still showed through in places, but it represented more growth and self-awareness than I'd seen from her in my entire adult life. I called that evening, and we had the most honest conversation of our adult relationship. There were difficult moments and old defenses, but also genuine connection that hadn't existed before. Will you come visit sometime soon? She asked toward the end of the call. Not for a holiday or big event, just to spend time together. I'd like that, I said, surprising myself with the realization that I genuinely meant it. Maybe in a few weeks, once this big project at work wraps up. As I hung up the phone, I reflected on the unexpected journey of the past year. The painful rejection that had initially seemed like the end of my family relationship had instead been the beginning of a different, healthier connection, one based on authenticity rather than performance, respect rather than control. The wounds hadn't disappeared entirely. Trust was still being rebuilt slowly and carefully. But for the first time, I was engaging with my parents as the adult I truly was, not the perpetual child they had tried to keep me. True family, I'd learned, wasn't about proximity or compliance. It wasn't about meeting others' expectations or contorting yourself to fit their vision. Real family, whether blood relations who earn the privilege or the chosen family we build ourselves, was about mutual respect, acceptance of differences, and love that doesn't come with conditions. As I looked toward the future, I felt neither the desperate hope of my birthday surprise journey nor the bitter resignation of its immediate aftermath. Instead, I experienced something more valuable, the quiet confidence of knowing I could navigate whatever came next on my own terms with boundaries intact and self-respect non-negotiable. Have you ever had to establish firm boundaries with family members who refuse to see you as the adult you've become? Comment below and share your experience. Did you find ways to maintain the relationship while protecting your well-being, or did you need to create distance? Remember to subscribe for more stories about navigating complex family dynamics, and hit that like button if this resonated with you. Thank you for listening to my journey from heartbreak to healing. Wishing you the courage to stand in your truth, whether your family celebrates it or not.